Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. It's Saturday night, and as such, we got 2 full hours of paranormal fun lying in wait ahead of us. So, hope you're all ready for that, because I hopefully got the buffet loaded here with all kinds of paranormal goodness, and I think you're gonna like it. I sure hope so. Anyway, otherwise, I need to figure out something else to do. If I'm not bringing you shows you love, then I'm doing something wrong. So. Hope you guys are doing great, though. Hope your weekend has been phenomenal. I just want to thank you all and tell you that it's an absolute honor that you're spending part of your well-deserved weekends right here with me, and that means the world. So I just want you to know, and I acknowledge that I realize this is precious time. And if you're here, that's pretty precious. So thanks for being precious right here with me. Now, Don was here last night, so it's just me tonight, folks. You, me, and a whole bucket of paranormal fun. So I'm sure we'll do just fine as it is. But it's Saturdays are just a little weirder now because whenever change happens, it's always this awkward transition for me. So I'm trying to find the rhythm for everything. I'd been doing the Wednesdays and Saturdays with Don for years, and suddenly that's on its head now. So everything just feels awkward. So I apologize, and that on top of not being 100% here myself has been a bit of a pull, but I hope you've been entertained all the same. So tonight we got a lot of things going on. We've got the news, of course, up front here. We'll be getting to in just a moment, and we've got a cool series of encounters at the end of the show that we're going to get into. People have had with gargoyles. And I was like, what? But apparently that's true. So we're going to dive into those. It's an article by our own Brent Swanser. We're going to dive into that in the last hour, probably the last half hour as it is, but we'll get into more of that later. And other than that, we got a lot of other fun stuff to get into, which is always the case here. I've got a bucket of fun. I already said that once, but it is. I think it's a lot of fun to have a variety of things to go through. And, hopefully everybody gets something they like, if not several things they like. Rather than, when I first started doing the shows, this is our topic, and that's what we talk about. And some shows were more successful than others, but I found that having a variety has been working out pretty well and keeping, hopefully, more of you entertained. So I got to pull up my sleeves here. About to get busy. But anyway, let's see. The phone lines will be open, of course. At least wait till the second half hour of the show to call in. But if you want to call in then, from then on through the show, 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll always see that right up above my head under the words Paranormal Portal on your screen. If you're watching on TFR Live, then you just got to pay attention. So because that's all there is. But apparently it's just me and the chatbot and TFR. So it's pretty quiet over there. It's a pretty quiet Saturday evening. It was literally a beautiful, gorgeous day, though, today. It felt like the first really awesome day of spring. I was outside barefoot, got the shorts on, got the T-shirt, and sitting in a chair outside. I'm like, oh, my God, this is the place I remember. I miss it so much. So not that has any bearing on the show whatsoever, but, God, I love being barefoot. I lived in the wrong hemisphere at least half the year, so... maybe someday I'll change that. But let's get going. I guess we should start out with the news because I don't think there's anything else I need to mention on the front end here. So let's get to the news, folks, and see what kind of mayhem I've dug up for you there. right, folks. Welcome to the Paranormal Portal news desk for all your fun news of the paranormal. And I will be bringing you through these articles tonight. Hopefully you find them at least informative, mildly entertaining maybe, but informative. I usually pick things that I think are either they're really bizarre and stupid or they're really kind of interesting and weird. But this is a statement I'd never heard before. And I don't know if this is climate alarmism or if this is an actual a factual statement, a scientifically based statement. I'm sure they're going to pretend it is either way, but is this truly the case? I don't know. But let's see what it says. And this is the article in question is from unexplained-mysteries.com. And it's only 3% of Earth's land ecosystems are intact. And I'm like, wow, what the hell does that mean exactly? I don't even know. So let's find out for sure. It says mankind's relentless and destructive influences damage just about every ecosystem on Earth. Yeah, this is going to be a happy, smiley, warm, loving piece. Andrew Plumptree of Cambridge Conservation Institute in the University of Cambridge discusses the findings of a new study that examines how much of our planet's ecosystems are still intact. This isn't too long. Okay. I was just scrolling ahead because if it's really dry and long, we're just going to go for the cliff notes. Few things excite biologists more than contemplating the parts of the world still relatively free of human damage. For the last 30 years, scientists intent on protecting Earth's biodiversity have sought to enshrine targets for preserving and expanding these remaining areas of wilderness. But what actually is wilderness? And how do we know where we found it? Most people would call anywhere that's remote and with few human inhabitants as wilderness. But for scientists, it's more complicated. Most scientific definitions of wilderness center on the concept of intactness. If the basic structure of a habitat, such as a forest, is intact, then there's little evidence of human impact, then it is often considered wilderness. Studies conducted over the past decade have tried to map how intact ecosystems are on a global scale using satellite imagery. Their estimates suggest that between 20% and 40% of the planet's land surface could be considered ecologically intact. But what can be detected by satellites is a poor measure of how wild a habitat actually is. Beneath the seemingly intact canopy, the extinction of large mammals and birds through hunting and introduction of invasive species and diseases has depleted the biodiversity of the world's wilderness areas. In a new study, my colleagues and I used different definition of intact ecosystems that considers whether all species known to have occurred in an area are still present and whether they're sufficiently abundant to play their ecological roles. Such as top predators or seed dispersers, we set the benchmark at AD 1500, which means that only part of the world which are ecologically intact as they were 500 years ago, with the same complement of species at similar levels of abundance, could be considered wilderness. We discovered that only 2.8% of the planet's land surface fits this description. These patches, each 10,000 square kilometers or larger, are scattered in various places around the world, and they include the Nabule Ndoku National Park in the Congo, Serengeti Ngorongoro in Tanzania, and Alto Rio Negro indigenous territory in the Amazon forest. The Great Siberian Polynya in northern Russia, and Kawaskar National Park in southern Chile. And these are very rare and special places that should be conserved, but only 11% of them fall within a protected area. I understand that people have an impact, but here's the other side of that coin. With all of this alarmism and stuff going on, and all of this push for living green and all that, and believe me, I understand we do have an impact on the world, and oftentimes it's a pretty harsh impact. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But then you've got people like Bill Gates in his infinite wisdoms.
Speak to us.
Jesus. And talking about spraying reflectors up into the upper atmosphere, like barium and all that other crap. And it's like, well, what do you think that's going to do to the world? Even in those protected places, that stuff's going to sift down. It's going to impact environments and ecosystems that normally don't have those things present in their soils and such. And I don't know how it can be so one-sided. that they can have such an aggressive view as far as human impact, but then be also talking about global warming and, hey, we better spray stuff up there that's going to reflect the sunlight because it's global warming. It's like, yeah, but that stuff falls. It's going to fall eventually. It comes down to the earth. It becomes part of water tables and food ecologies and stuff. And there's going to be huge impacts from spraying these metals and stuff up in the upper atmosphere. It's just so damn frustrating because you can't have your cake and eat it too. But that's enough of that article. Unfortunately, we do have an impact. We can do better. I'm sure we are doing better, and we will do better. And God help us. What do you do? It's not going to get fixed overnight anyway. So let's go to the next one on our list here and talk about that. Because maybe that'll be a little happier than talking about how much we're screwing things up. We already know we're screwing it up. We don't need more proof. What, you mean all those straws and plastic bags in the ocean are bad? What? We know. We're doing it wrong. We're working on it. We're broken. Here's the next article. And this is weird. I don't know why they would do this because it seems to me it's an odd thing. It's an odd thing to do. But I guess it's symbolic more than anything, but showing the long journey we've taken technologically since it kind of started. But from unexplained-mysteries.com, Mars drone has a piece of world's first airplane. That sounds like the Wright brothers. NASA's experimental Mars helicopter is carrying a piece from the Wright brothers' original aircraft. Just a few weeks' time, NASA will be trailing out a type of vehicle that has never been sent to another planet before. A helicopter drone named Ingenuity. Having hitched a ride to the Red Planet in the belly of the Perseverance rover, Ingenuity will be the first powered aircraft to ever take the skies of another world. In total, it will aim to achieve 5 individual flights over the course of several weeks. If it succeeds, helicopter drones could be an integral part of the future exploratory space missions. What makes Ingenuity's mission so special? In addition to being the first, is the fact that the drone will be carrying with it a tiny piece of history in the form of a scrap of fabric from the Wright brothers' history-making airplane Flyer 1, which took off for the first time in December of 1903. Its success brought about a new age of aviation that would change the world forever. At the size of a postage stamp, the fabric will soon be part of another history-making flight. The separate piece of Flyer 1 was previously carried to the moon and back aboard Apollo 11. The future of powered flight in space exploration is solid and strong, said NASA's Bobby Braun. The guy's name is Bobby Braun. Braun. What if he's related to the Shavers and stuff? Are you related to the Shaver people? Well, there you have it. I don't know I guess it's symbolic. I don't know. It seems like a fluffy bit of trivia, really, but whatever. That's cool. They got a piece of the Air Flyer 1 or whatever. The Wright brothers plane. Interesting. Let's go on to the next one. This one is, I use iPhones, just for the record, mostly because that's what gets chosen for me. Because I really don't care. I've had both. I've had Google phones and Android phones, and I've had iPhones. I really don't use the phone that much. In fact, I try usually to stay off of it. I just doing my thing. But I got to tell you that what I have noticed with the iPhones is that they're generally really pretty well made. And when Apple makes something, the price tag is really steep, but they really are in a league of their own as far as quality is concerned. I think anyway. I think most of their stuff, and I worked IT, so it comes with a bit of an educated history that I think that Macs and Apple products are generally better made than a lot of the IBM clones. So, but this is an interesting article, and I don't know. I guess somebody finally was able to test this, but apparently iPhone still works after years spent in the lake. A man who lost his iPhone over 12 months ago couldn't believe his luck when he managed to find it again. The man, who's been identified on social media only as Chen, has been paddleboarding on Sun Moon Lake, Sun Moon Lake, okay, on March 15th last year when his phone, which he'd been keeping around his neck in a waterproof bag, disappeared into the depths of the unfortunate topple into the water. Unable to retrieve it, he went home wondering if anyone else would ever come across it. Incredibly, over a year later, during the worst drought Taiwan has seen in 56 years, he received word that someone had actually discovered his phone lying in the baked, dried-up shoreline. The specific area in question, it turned out, had not been exposed for over 50 years, and a mere few days after the phone was found, the area was underwater again. When Chen was able to finally reunited with the phone, he took it out of the pouch, which was covered in soil, and tried charging it up, and to his surprise and delight, it actually worked. I can only say that the waterproof case for the phone is really great, he wrote. There's no water in it. I'm so happy to have recovered my phone after having lost it for so long. Others on Facebook were quickly to add their own thoughts, with one person joking that the sales of this waterproof bag are going to boom, and another referring to his phone as the mini Titanic. This achievement may be impossible for many people to accomplish in a lifetime, another noted. Well, I mean, if it's a good bag and it keeps out the moisture, that's just what? It's just exposure to mostly darkness. I'm sure it's not a lot of sunlight or anything, so it's probably a pretty mild place. It's like leaving it in a drawer. I guess that's a lot less remarkable than it sounded like on the surface, folks. Sounded like it was much more pronounced and amazing. I thought it fell out of the bag, and then he dried it out and plugged it in, put it in rice or whatever, and then plugged it in. It worked. But nope, not quite that sensational. So we'll get to the next one here. And it's a reference to Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla. What an enigmatic character and a man so far ahead of his time. Even still ahead of our time. I think he saw things in the universe that most of us will never understand throughout courses of lifetimes. But he just was fluent in a whole different kind of intelligence. The 5G network has the potential to realize the dream that Tesla obsessed more than a century ago. Oh, 5G could achieve what Tesla could not. I don't know. Sans the tumors, maybe. At the height of his career, the pioneering electrical engineer Nikola Tesla became obsessed with an idea. He theorized that electricity could be transmitted wirelessly through the air at long distances, either via a series of strategically positioned towers or hopping across a system of suspended balloons. Things didn't go to plan, and Tesla's ambitions on a wireless global electrical supply were never realized. But the theory of itself wasn't disproven. It would simply require an extraordinary amount of power, much of which would have been wasted. Now, a research paper has suggested that the architects of the 5G network maybe unwittingly built what Tesla failed to construct at the turn of the 20th century, a wireless power grid that could be adapted to charge or power small devices embedded in cars, homes, workplaces, and factories. Because 5G relies on a dense network of masts and powerful series of antennae, it's possible that the same infrastructure, with some tweaks, could beam power to small devices. But the transmission would still suffer from the key drawback of Tesla towers' high energy wastage, which may be difficult to justify given the urgency of the climate crisis. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of techno babble. I don't know. I guess it's kind of similar in a sense. I think it sounds like it could be. I don't know. I don't want to read all that because it's going to get real dry and real confusing, I'm sure, pretty quickly. And really uninteresting. Unless you're into Tesla. I will copy the link, though, and put it in our respective chats so that if anybody is interested in checking out, they're welcome to do so. But it's an interesting idea. Are they unwittingly creating what Tesla set out to do so long ago? Well, there's Bam. How you doing, Bam? Welcome. Wondered if you're going to make it in tonight. Just wouldn't be the same over here in TFR without you, because it would just be me. So welcome. All right, so there you go. All right, let's see what's next here. I got one more article, I think. Yes. This one I thought was pretty bizarre. Pretty darn bizarre, folks. Got 6 minutes. We're okay. We got time. It's like the beginning of The Incredibles. I got time. All right, so this is the last article tonight in our news segment. And this is, hold on. This is coming from unexplained-mysteries.com, which the whole host of our news articles came tonight. But monkey plays game of Pong using only its mind. Wow. I don't know if that's sad or good. Scientists at Neuralink have made it possible for a monkey to play a computer game just by thinking. The company, which focuses on creating brain-computer interfaces, has been described by Elon Musk as an antidote to the existential threat of artificial intelligence, surpassing our own capabilities. Its latest accomplishment to make it possible for a monkey to play Pong using only its mind, the bizarre yet impressive accomplishment was recently posted up to YouTube and was made possible by implanting a special chip inside the monkey's brain that could record information about how its neurons were firing, thus enabling the computer to learn how to predict its hand movements. The experiment began by having the monkey use a joystick to move a cursor around the screen, and when it moved it to one of the colored squares, it achieved a treat through a straw. By learning to predict the monkey's hand movements, the computer was able to interpret and represent the animal's intended movements on the screen, even when the joystick was unplugged. Its functionality accumulated in having the monkey play a game of Pong, with the paddle being moved up and down the screen using nothing but the animal's own thoughts. It's an impressive example of how Neuralink's brain-computer interface technology could one day make it possible for human beings to control a computer without the need for physical inputs. Such technology could prove particularly beneficial to people with paralysis and other conditions. Yeah, I agree. That would be cool. It could even make it possible for our existing abilities to be augmented, proving such advantages as superhuman vision or hearing that would not otherwise be possible. Just how far Neuralink can take this technology will certainly be interesting to see. Yeah, well, there you go. I don't think I'm going to let them put any chips in my head, but that's cool. I mean, I don't mind the technology because I think it can be helpful. It can help people that need the help, that otherwise may not have the ability to do things like this. I know there's an eye tracking technology they can use for like paraplegics and quadriplegics and such to operate technologies and drive their little carts and stuff. But, I think if it was done without having to track the eye movements, then maybe it'd be quicker. Maybe it'd be less of a boundary on that. But who knows? Just interesting all the same. But that is the last of our articles for the news tonight, folks. And I think it sounds like we had a pretty robust journey through the news. I hope you guys enjoyed those for what they are. And we can now move back to our regularly scheduled program. Unbelievable. All that news, and it takes up the first half hour pretty much. So I'm not sure if the breaks are lined up tonight or not, but we'll keep an eye on it because according to the clock, we're about 2.5 minutes out of the first break. So we're moving into it, but we've got a lot more to go. What are we going to be doing after this? We're going to be talking about some more of those intuition stories. I think those are really powerful and good. There's another article that we're going to cover in the second hour, and I'm pretty positive we didn't share this one before. I had several of them pulled up when we did the Skinwalker show, and I'm thinking this one is one that I didn't, and I read through it, and I'm like, I don't think I've read this one, but if it's possible, it might be redundant because I read so many different things through the Skinwalker show, but it's an article from liveabout.com that we're going to get into in hour number 2. Are Skinwalkers real or legend? And then we're going to cook through maybe some more Shadow Man stories. And then we're going to, last half hour anyway, there's a couple things we're going to talk about. One of which is another article from the Mysterious Universe. It's not written by Brent Swancer, though. It was written by Bill Dorfeld. And it says, we live in a liminal realm. And now there's data to prove it. And that includes a mapping site that they have online, which actually acts much like the BFRO, except that you can report all kinds of different phenomena. And we'll explore that in the second hour as well. And then, of course, we're going to close up the show tonight with an article by Brent Swanser, which is Bizarre Modern Encounters with Real Gargoyles. And I don't know. That's bizarre. I know I've heard mention of such things before, but I don't remember reading anything like this before. But I think it's absolutely fascinating because, of course, gargoyles are a big part of our cultures, especially in Europe and such, as they were used to ward off evil and keep evil at bay. So we'll get into that as well. So there's a lot of things left on the boat tonight that we're going to get through. And, of course, anything and everything else. And if any of you guys want to call in and be part of tonight's show, you certainly can do so. Again, the number for the show is 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. So if you want to call in and share something of your own, I'm all ears. All right, guys, we'll be right back in just a couple minutes. Time to pay the bills. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are in half hour number 2. Half hour number 2 is upon us. It's gone that quickly. Just a quick news segment and boom, we're back at it. But that's okay. That's how it works here on the portal. Don't let the time anomalies play with your head. It's just part of why we do things here, I guess. Just taking a look at the chats and seeing if I've been missing anything. But I always get a kick out of Elaine. Elaine's one of our mods in our YouTube chat, and she has a dog, and the dog is very affectionately dubbed the Bone Hoe. I love you, Elaine. That's awesome. I keep seeing that every time I chuckle. It's been many times I've seen it, but it never gets old. Big hearts to you too, Jordan. Thank you. Jordan, good to see you. And good to see all of you guys. Thank you for all being here, all 40 of you. There's kind of a quiet night tonight, but that's okay. We don't need a huge crowd in order to have fun here. I've noticed that always second hour is the bigger hour. Not sure what's going on out in the webs, but we definitely draw a bigger crowd in hour number 2 for some reason. So whatever that is, I'm just glad people are finding us. That is exciting to me. So let's get to some more of the paranormal fun that we love. So nothing to see here, Brent Thomas. Well, thanks, Ozzy. It's still my chat, you know. Jeez, don't kick me out of my own chat. All right. We're going to go to our Factinate article. It's talking about the little feelings of intuition that saved people. And I can't state this enough, and I know I've said it before, but I firmly, 100% believe in gut feelings. I have said so many experiences in my own life where my gut feelings have saved me from a ton of grief. I've had plenty of experiences in my own life where ignoring my gut feelings has caused me plenty of heartbreak and everything in between. But I got to tell you, if you pay attention to those, that little voice, whatever it is it a guardian angel? Is it some kind of a guide, spirit guide? Is it just a higher part of ourselves peeking through and trying to guide us a little better, like we're about to make some kind of mistake? It's hard to know, but whatever it is, I think everybody has it to some degree or another. I just think that we all have different levels of attention that we give it, and that's the key. And that's the key between a person who is psychic and who is not as much psychic, is that they're not tuning into those inner voices as much, in my opinion, But I don't think that, any one person has the market cornered on these special abilities. I just believe that for some reason, those abilities are just more tuned in naturally for those people. Or they've tuned in through other means, whether it's some tragedy that pushed those things to the surface or whatever. But that certainly can be that. It can be that as well. But anyway, let's read some more of these and find out what people have experienced. And this is number 34 on the list. The longest run. I was 13. The bus would take me home from school in 15 minutes, but I liked taking the 1-hour walk home. While walking on the main road, a van pulled over some 100 feet away from me. It wasn't a family van. It was one of those utility boxy looking ones. The van door was open and a man was waving at me with both of his arms. I was too far away to hear what he was saying. This is a bad thing. If a van ever stops asking for help, just nope out. Don't do it. Usually I love to help people, but something told me to keep walking. So I kept walking. I looked back 5 minutes later, and this guy is walking behind me. Relaxed pace, and I'm not worried, but I walk a little faster. I look back maybe 2 or 3 minutes later, and he's still walking, but closer, and he's waving his arms again. So I start jogging a little. Now he's jogging. Then I start running as fast as I can, not stopping to look back. At what point I turned onto the next street, and I couldn't see him anymore. I was so cold with fear and out of breath, waiting for the intersection light to change. The light changed and I went back to walking, but I was out of breath. 5 minutes later, I look back and I can't believe my eyes. He's still following me. So I ran the last 2 minutes to my building, even though I didn't want him to see where I lived. I ran into the building lobby, looked through the glass doors. He wasn't there. Pushed the elevator button, went back to the glass door and saw him on the street, far away, still walking. I've always tried to make sense of what he was going to do. And this was a busy suburban area. Was he going to just stab me and run away? No, probably not. They don't bring vans for that. What did he want to do with me in particular? Did he just leave his van behind to get towed? No, he probably wasn't alone. So many questions, so weird. Yeah, they don't bring vans for just a random stabbing normally. Number 35, voices in my head. That can be a bad sign, but for a lot of different reasons. After a party many years ago, I was driving home at like 4 a.m. with my friend passed out in the passenger seat. I was driving fast down a steep hill, and that's like a half mile long at least. I was on autopilot as I drive down that street every day. Suddenly, about a half a block from the major intersection, which I had a green light for, I heard a voice in my head. It said these exact words: "You may want to slow down because if you don't, you might lose your life." It was weird because that's not really what my tone of voice or style of speaking is like. But anyway, I slowed down, and as I was entering the intersection, a car blew the red light at about 50 or 60 miles per hour right in front of me. I was so close that I nearly threw up. I started shaking and punching my friend, yelling how I just saved our lives. He just groaned and went back to sleep. Jerk. Yeah, he was drunk. That's terribly scary. Number 36, depend on the kindness of strangers. I was at a party for my boyfriend's father, but I had a headache that wasn't going away. I'd been drinking, but I wasn't drunk. I was just feeling terrible, so I made my excuses and left to walk home alone, as I didn't want to ruin his night with his dad. It was a 10-minute walk, if that, from the pub to our house, and it wasn't properly dark yet. I walked down the street and passed a man sitting on a wall drinking a beer. A minute after I passed, I heard the bottle smash, and then footsteps a little while back. Nothing unusual. It was a main road, and there was another pub further along, but my gut was screaming that something was wrong. I hurriedly walked back to the pub and stopped outside to ask the smokers for a light and chat as I smoked. That's when I saw him pass by me and then stare at me from across the street for an uncomfortable amount of time. With my heart pounding, I asked a bouncer working at the doors if he could order me a taxi. A few weeks later, while in the town center, I saw a mugshot of the same dude. He was wanted for assault. Yeah, that's not a good deal. The Gatekeeper, number 37. I was helping my company move equipment from our old office space to our brand new location. It required me to park my car in a very small alley in the downtown area of Chicago, the Loop for those who know. The security officer told me that he would watch on the camera to see that I got there so he could open up the big gate for the service entry. The gate was about 30 feet wide and 20 feet tall, and it was one of those roll-up types. Well, I parked and got out of my car and looked up at the camera. He must have been watching because the gate started opening right away. I was going to duck under it once it got about 4 feet high, but had a momentary gut feeling of not to do that. As soon as I took a step backwards instead of going forward, the axle broke on one end and the entire 60 feet square of steel gate came crashing down. If I'd gone under the gate, I would have been crushed. In my panic, I scrambled backward to the alley wall opposite of the gate and missed falling down a 4-foot window well by just a couple of inches. That is terrifying. Damn it. Ugh. The security guard was amazed and incredibly relieved that I was all right. Yeah, that's one of those things that would, if it goes sideways, it's going all the way sideways. There's not any way that ends happy with somebody getting crushed by a gate. Yikes. That's terrible. Number 38, Jeepers Creepers. I was walking back home from my grandmother's house when a car pulled up beside me. As I kept walking, the car slowly followed. God, that's creepy. I can't believe how many of these creepy car things there are. That's horrible. I'm sure glad these people have this intuitions. When I looked into the car, there was a man in his 30s or 40s who had the evilest grin on his face. His face has never left my mind. I don't blame you. As he was slowly coming towards me, God, I'm so sorry. There we go. His face was never left my mind, and as he was slowly coming towards me, his eyes not leaving me, I screamed out help and ran until I saw someone who let me into their house. The man didn't leave until we called the police. And when they came, they searched for his car and had found handcuffs, a blindfold, and a big container. Wow, that's horrid. Let me do this. A big container with 2 holes poked in the top. Oh, that's horrible. So that guy absolutely had a diabolical plan. And he didn't even try to hide it. Like, he was just grimacing in anticipation. That's evil. That is just evil. Wow, I'm glad she made it. Glad she made it. That's horrid. I think about that, and I think of all of the horrible things that could be your last moments on this earth, and how tragic it is that is what happens to some people, is they're greeted with that absolute terror and horror of someone stealing away the thread of their life. And that's just, to me, it's just so horrible. And I know it is to everybody, but I can't imagine that would be the last memory of your experiences on Earth. How absolutely contrary to anything good that is. Number 39, lesson learned. One day I was driving away from my parents' house. When I was about 2 miles down the road, I got this really freaked out feeling. I reached over and pulled on my shoulder belt. I rarely wore it back then, and another mile down the road, my car started to drift a little bit. I made what I thought was a minor steering correction and felt the car jerk and hop towards oncoming traffic. I corrected again, hit the brakes, and my car felt like it hopped from one side of the lane to the other and plunged off the road and plowed into a telephone pole. Well, I was completely unharmed, though the car was totaled. My parents had it towed home, and my dad found that a bolt had sheared off the steering column. I still have a chunk of that telephone pole over 20 years later, and it helps remind me to always listen to my instincts and to always wear my seatbelt. Yeah, I got to admit, I've always just worn my seatbelt, and it really feels awkward to ever drive without it. I don't know, it's just like that last little bit that you could just get accustomed to it. But anyway, don't date and drive. Number 40. I was on a date. He didn't know where I lived or anything, and I was always paranoid about that. But things had gone well, and my car was cold, so he offered for us to both to sit in his while mine heated up, as he had a remote starter, and I said, sure. Besides, he had the cutest dog, too. No one with a cute dog could be that bad, right? It puts the lotion in the bucket. He had a cute dog. Well, I sat down in his car, and we closed the doors. And that's when the alarm bells went off in my head. The door was locked. I went to open the door because I was freaking out, but it didn't open. It also had a manual switch that could have been used, but it was broken. He told me I would need a screwdriver to get it unlocked. Oh no, that's not the right thing for him to say at all. We were talking about things like religion when I told him I prayed, and he told his dog it was a sign from God. He said they were going to have to keep me. God. Then he looks in the back seat, and I look in the rearview mirror and see rope back there. He jokingly talks about kidnapping me a few times and goes to put the car in reverse. I laugh right along with him while praying silently. Something tells me to go along with this, so I tell him he doesn't have to kidnap me to keep me. He also continues to make jokes about tying me up and keeping me locked up in his basement, that nobody would ever know, and then I would never be able to leave him. Well, I just go on gut instinct, and I tell this guy that I know I shouldn't be saying this, and it's only a first date, but something just feels really right with him. He puts the car back into park, looks at me, says, "Really?" I go on this tangent about how I know it's way too soon to know if there's a connection, and didn't want to tell him for risk of him freaking out. I told him I was really bummed I was going out of town for the weekend because that meant there would be no chance of seeing him when I got back. I keep going and say that I have to be getting home as my friend is expecting me over tonight so we could leave supper early in the morning. I'm having so much fun, I don't want to leave. But I would like a real hug before I got in my car, the kind one that requires standing and not being in a vehicle. So he makes me promise that I'll hear from him when I get back. Absolutely. He wanted a kiss, if it wasn't too soon, and me to be his girlfriend. Yeah, dude, whatever you want. My internal alarms are going off, and I'm kind of terrified right now. The car door unlocks. We get our hug, I kiss him, and try to appear pleasant. Of course, I had to tell his dog goodbye, so he rolls down the window for me to give the good boy pets. Guess what I see? Trash bags and an axe on the floor. I get in my car, wave goodbye, and get the hell out of there. Oh, yeah. That's so terrifying. Oh, my God. Terrible, terrible people in this world. Oh. And that's a weird psychology. It's just a strange psychology that there are some people that are so broken. Their sensibilities are so shattered that they feel like they want something. And if it's not given to them, they feel absolutely compelled to just take it. And somehow that's okay in their head. And that's what I don't understand. How can that ever be okay? Oh, it's just frightening. Number 41, moms always know best. Well, it says they always know. I don't know about best, but mine's watching, so we'll go with best. When I was in 4th grade, I had a headache before school. Of course, me being a kid, I asked my mom to stay home that day, and she, having a weird feeling about that day, said yes, and I went back to sleep. She felt like something was off, and when I came to her about staying home, she said yes, just in case she was right. It was the best decision she ever made. That morning at school during breakfast, an older woman ran her car into the school's wall next to the lunchroom, killing my best friend. He was eating breakfast, and if I had gone to school, I would have been eating with him at that table. The school was so certain that I was under the bricks that the lady's car that they called my mom, confirming my whereabouts. My mom and I thank her gut feeling almost at least once a month for saving my life that day. Oh, what about that other boy, though? That's so sad. Too bad he didn't get that bad feeling, too. That's the hard part. Oh, wow. That's a heartbreaker. Quick thinking saves lives. It's a short one. It says, I was walking out of a grocery store when I saw this kid about to cross the road. Something came over me and I yanked him back onto the sidewalk. Not even a second later, a truck came flying past. He was only around 7 or 8 years old. You just saved that kid's life. Kill him with kindness is the next one. I have a story of what happens when you don't listen to your gut. I've got a bunch of those too. How much time you got? Or at least you listened to it a little bit late. That day, my gut said, don't get into the car with this person you've just met. Well, I didn't listen. He legit kidnapped me and drove me to a forest and tried to drag me out. My gut said to calm down and be nice to him. So I basically talked my way out of the situation by being kind and stroking his ego. I was able to convince him that he didn't need to do this and that I'd be his, but he needed to let me go because my friend was waiting for me. She knew I was getting a ride and that if I didn't show up soon, maybe we couldn't get together. This guy was crazy, but it worked. And he drove me to where my friend was waiting. The entire time I had to keep reassuring him that I wasn't mad and that I was happy that he chose me, gag. Anyway, I got out safe and unharmed except for some bruises from when I first tried to fight him off. He spent a year in jail after that and ended up going to jail for another crime right afterwards. Yeah, that's horrifying. Wow. That is terrible. I'm glad that at least they kind of buy the whole, hey, no, I think I'm honored you picked me. That's great. Good deal. This is The Watcher, number 44. I used to date a girl who I would go see every night after I got off of work, and when I worked until midnight. And after meeting, I would stay at her house until about 1 or 2 a.m. Sometimes as I left her house, she would follow me in her car and stop at a nearby all-night grocery store. I always begged her not to go alone, but she always said she'd be fine. Sometimes I would wait in the parking lot until she came back out. Then we'd go our separate ways. Sometimes I wouldn't. One time I felt ill, so as we left, she said, just go straight home. I'll be fine. I always am. For some reason, I felt like that was the night I needed to be there, so I stayed, but I didn't tell her. She thought I went straight home. I was in the parking lot as she pulled in, but she didn't see me. As she walked in, a shady-looking dude was walking out. Well, she ignored him, but he looked back at her about 3 or 4 times. Then he gets to his truck, and another guy's in there. And they talk through the window for a minute, looking back at the store a couple of times. The second guy gets out of the truck, gets something out of the back of it, and they both head back into the store. I couldn't be sure that they were going to do anything, but I was not about to take a chance. So I go into the store too, and I see them going past every aisle and then motion to each other like, there she is. So I walk in a bit faster to catch up. I turn into the aisle just as they are approaching her. They're looking at each other from behind. I yell, hey! They both turn, and so does my girlfriend. I brush by them and give her a look and say, hey guys. They nod awkwardly as my girlfriend says to me, what are you doing here? I kiss her and make up some story about wanting to buy aspirin. The 2 guys leave. I never told my girlfriend that story, and I don't know why. I don't know what they were up to, but it wasn't good. Yeah, that's horrifying. So many of horrifying stories, though. This is almost like a look into the underbelly of the criminal mind. It's terrible. It's really disheartening. Ugh. Yeah. Number 45, Stranger Danger. I was maybe 6 years old playing with a friend in the playground. An older man came and asked us if we'd like to play at his private playground. Oh. I remembered my mom telling me not to interact with strangers, so I declined. I was sure as a kid that he had a private playground and was actually kind of mad at myself for not saying yes. Years later, I was 25 and walked home alone from a club being tipsy, and that's when it struck me. Suddenly, I remembered this man from my childhood, and it occurred to me what that really was. I see in the corner of my eye 2 guys behind me, one leaning on the wall and the other one just nodding and walking out of my perspective. Got chills like crazy. All of a sudden, this dude locks me in his arms, trying to touch me, and I said no. He didn't stop. No one was around. So I said, let's just walk, because I was convinced the other guy was just waiting as well. We walked. He held me super close to him. I asked him for his jacket because I thought I could run if he has to mess with his zipper. He just grinned at me and held me even tighter and didn't say a word, so I felt that I was running out of time, and there was still no pedestrian in sight. So I relaxed my body on purpose while walking. He sensed it, stopped holding me so tight, and I focused for 30 seconds, and right at that moment when he looked back, I punched him as hard as I could on the side of his jaw. He fell to the ground, and I ran. Oh, God. Unbelievable. It's really disheartening to read these because it just shows you how deep these sicknesses go. Ugh. Number 46, Ditching Danger. Yeah, this one's a little longer, though. Uh-oh. This one's going to be a little too long. Let's skip to the next one. I got 1:55. Maybe I can do it. I was driving home late at night when I was around 21. She lived in a pretty rural area outside of St. Louis, Missouri, and about a quarter mile from her house was an old abandoned farm and farmhouse. I always thought of this place as non-threatening, and as she told me, she and her 2 sisters would go there as kids, and they found an attic full of cool things, including a trunk full of vintage women's clothing and old love letters. It was like something out of a movie. Anyway, I'm driving her home. It's a hot, humid Missouri summer, so I got the windows open. We're also singing at the top of our lungs. Past an abandoned farm, on a drop her off at her house. I wait long enough to see she makes it inside, and I head back out the way I came. I'm driving along, and I get to where the farm is. I see 2 things in the middle of the road, but I can't tell what they are. My danger meter goes off. I'd just driven this road, and there was nothing there. And that's when I put the windows up and made sure the doors were locked. I got closer and realized the items are 2 car batteries spaced out in the road in such a way as I would have to get out and move them to drive on the road. I immediately know I wasn't getting out of the car. I picked the side of the road that had more shallow ditch and gunned it. I was driving a little SUV and remember the feeling the car run over branches and things in the ditch, but I just gunned it and got out of there. All the way home, I felt creeped out and checked my rearview mirror. I called my friend the next morning and told her what happened. We both agreed it was weird. That is. But we're going to go to the break, folks. 1 hour break right now. We're going to come back and get into lots more of the Paranormal Portal. Don't go away.
Truth Frequency Radio is your number one source for news and information.
Play their games. Everybody loves to place their bets. They don't understand the price I paid. They don't care to comprehend. Trace their lines upon my body, ripping scars across my heart. Raging anger boils inside me as their lies keep falling apart. With my silence, I am not a stupid boy. No more breaking me with kindness, just you dance upon my joy. Leading me with empty promise, you're just another fucking mess. Taking off the slice of my sanity, just make sure that you're well fed.
Caroline is not like those she's with. They're attracted to the one thing about her that is different from themselves. Her life force. It is very strong. It gives off its own illumination. It is a light that implies life and memory of love and home and earthly pleasures. Something they desperately desire, but can't have anymore. Right now, she's the closest thing to that.
Poltergeists are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
Welcome back, everybody. We're into hour number 2 already. Can you believe that? It does go quickly, but hopefully it's going quickly for you as well. But that's a sign of enjoyment, I guess. So nothing too bad about that. I got an article here I'm going to read to you first of all, and to lead off hour number 2. And I don't know what this is a story about, but I just thought the heading was so bizarre that we should probably read it because it sounds kind of paranormally. So let's take a look at this. And this is coming from ladbible.com. And the story in question is, woman shares creepy story about why she no longer lets her dog out at night. Ooh. All right, let's see what it's up. What it say? I think I'm going to blow this up a little more. I did blow it up a little, but still kind of blocky text. That's better, I guess. All right. It says, when you're alone in the house on a quiet night and you hear a noise, it's natural to get the chills. Maybe it's a ghost. Maybe it's some bloke who's secretly been living in the loft for 3 months, figuring out the best time to come out, chop you up into little bits and eat you. But you know, deep down, it's probably nothing. It's probably just the dog wanting back in. Or is it? In this chilling account, Reddit user Flaxen Fair explains why she no longer lets her dog out after dark. And she begins by saying, before I start, here's a bit of context to my story. My husband and I lived on a small 2-floor house with 2 main entrances, one along the front and the other along the side of the house, which opens up into the laundry room. When you're too busy or it's too late to walk our dog, we hook his collar onto a long line that's attached to one of the pipes in the corner of our house so he can use the bathroom. We used to do this from the door in our laundry room, but we noticed the large step from the door to the ground had been taking a toll on his hips. As a result, we started getting him through the front door instead, since the porch is much closer to the ground. This particular night, I was home alone with my dog, and it was around midnight when I decided to let him outside one last time before going to bed. I hook him up to his line, close the door, and lock it before heading out into the kitchen to put away the dishes. This is pretty routine, even if he used the bathroom quickly. He liked to walk around along the front and side of the house for a few minutes before coming back inside. As I'm putting away the dishes, I hear a scratch at the door. How my dog signals that he wants to come back inside, so I head over to let him back in. Since I've watched way too many scary movies, I always look through the door's peephole before opening the door. Out of habit, I look to check that my dog is out front of the door, and instead I see a man staring very intently at the door handle. I freeze with my hand on the door handle. I don't know how much time went by, but then I heard another scratch, this one louder than the last. This kind of wakes me from my initial shock, and I run to grab my cell phone, and I call my husband to tell him what's happening. Well, he's very confused. I probably wasn't explaining the situation really well, but says that he's heading home. This is when I realize my dog is still outside with this person. I head back to the front door, trying to make as little noise as possible to check whether the stranger is there. Just like before, he's standing there, head bowed, looking at the doorknob. I tiptoe over to the laundry room and slowly open the door as quietly as possible. I can't see my dog anywhere, and the side of my house is covered in gravel. I knew I couldn't step outside without making a lot of noise. With my heart still pounding in my chest, I go to look out the front door to keep an eye on the stranger and to get a better look at him. I considered calling the police, but I didn't feel they would take me seriously since all this man was doing was standing at the front of my house. I tried taking a picture of him with my cell phone, but my camera was only able to take pictures of the peephole and not the images behind the glass. All of a sudden, the man looks directly at me. I swear he knew I was there. He glares at me, then opens his mouth to show his taunting, malicious grin. He stood there that way for a few seconds. With that, he turns around and starts to walk down the street. I stay in the same place, almost expecting him to rush back and start pounding on the door. Luckily, my husband got back after a few minutes. Long story short, he convinced me to call the police. And they went out looking for our dog, and it turns out this man had cut the end of the line connected to the pipe. And our dog decided it was a good time for him to explore the neighbor's backyard, which is where we found him. It's been 3 years since this happened. We've since moved to a new house, unrelated reasons, and the police weren't ever able to come up with any suspects, but ever since then, we take our dog on very long walks before the sun goes down. Chilling stuff. It doesn't bear thinking about what might have happened had she not checked through the peephole before opening the door. She might not even have been able to or been around to share the story. There's always a chance that these types of stories could be made up, but this one doesn't seem like a classic internet creepypasta. It's got a ring of authenticity to it, especially when you start scrolling through the responses. Either way, we'll be doing a full perimeter check next time we let the dog out for a piss. Well, the other part of it that's really odd is that this guy obviously has spent some time watching because he knew that he was going to have to cut that rope so the dog would go wander. Also, he knew the signal the dog gave to come back in the house. So this guy was at it for a long time. He'd been watching and observing, and that's all kinds of creepy. Yeah. Another creepy story. Dang it. We're on creepy stories night. That's not good. But what do you do? All right, we're going to move to another article, and this is 11 of the most mysterious unresolved UFO cases of the modern era. With all the upcoming disclosure and stuff, everybody's got UFOs on the mind. We're all kind of interested to see what will come out in June or July whenever the releases are official and actually released. But we're all expecting these pretty incredible, these pretty incredible admissions, I guess, of contact with otherworldly intelligences. I don't know if we're going to get what we want. I don't know what we'll get. We'll probably just get some redacted national security version of something with ambiguous reasonings and lots of hyperbole and possibility. And that's about it. But let's see what this article says. Oh my God, look at that font. Who the hell can read this stuff? You can tell it's plenty old. All right. When was this? I don't see a date. Oh, actually May 17th of last year. It's time to take the UFO seriously, says Alexander Wendt, a professor of international relations at Ohio State University, who believes researchers should fight the notion of the UFO taboo, investigate and pursue an explanation for the unidentified objects as they would any other field of science. In fact, one secretive U.S. government-funded $22 million program known as the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, or AATIP, which investigated UFOs from 2007 until 2012, shows that the U.S. government did take the issue seriously, and it wasn't the first program of its kind. Okay, well, there's another article. Here's a look at a few of the recent history's most famous UFO sightings and government programs that were born out of their investigations. Number one is the Kenneth Arnold sighting, 1947. In June 24, 1947, a private pilot called Kenneth Arnold was flying his Cal Air A-2 airplane in the state of Washington when he saw a series of bright flashes coming from north of Mount Rainier. When he later likened the movements to saucers skipping on water. and the press picked it up, and so began our modern fascination with flying saucers and UFOs. The claims were taken seriously by U.S. officials, and 10 days later, after Arnold's experience, there were corroborated when a United Airlines crew on a plane to Seattle spotted 5 to 9 disc-like objects that kept pace with their aircraft for 10 to 15 minutes. There's a really badly photocopied article. Other witnesses also came forward saying that they had seen silver discs from the ground, and several sighting reports were filed with the U.S. government. During his statement, Arnold claimed that the objects were too fast to be any existing human aircraft and that they easily darted in and out of valleys with impressive maneuvers. Arnold's sightings directly led to the formation of Project Sign at the end of 1947, the first publicly acknowledged U.S. Air Force UFO investigation. Project Sign evolved into Project Grudge, which then became known as Project Blue Book. The Roswell Incident, of course. Only a few weeks after Arnold's sightings came an event that has gone down as the most famous in UFO history to date. In the summer of 1947, rancher William Brazel discovered mysterious debris, including metallic rods, chunks of plastic, and unusual papery scraps in one of his New Mexico fields. After Brazel reported the wreckage, soldiers from the nearby Roswell Army Air Force Base came to retrieve the materials. News headlines at the time claimed that a flying saucer had crashed in Roswell. Oh, man. That was taken back. Though the U.S. Army Air Force eventually claimed the object was part of an experimental nuclear test detecting balloon technology made for the highly classified Project Mogul, Jesse Marcel, the officer who originally assessed the crash, countered this with the following statement. "It was not anything from this earth that I'm quite sure of. I was familiar with just about all the materials used in the aircraft and or air travel, and this was nothing like that. It could not have been." Number 3, the Tehran UFO Incident in 1976. In September 19, 1976, incident in Tehran, Iran, started with phone calls from concerned citizens reporting a bright light in the sky. Iran's military sent out F-4 fighter jets to investigate, and as they approached the object, their instruments started to malfunction. One pilot said he saw a bright light being released from a UFO. Thinking it was a missile sent his way, the pilot tried to open fire, but malfunctioning equipment didn't let him release any rounds. Some believe the bright light may have been Jupiter, which was especially bright in the sky that night. Really, just doesn't that pilot wouldn't know Jupiter? The glowing object may have been meteors that were seen above Iran the same day. Others believe the object was a UFO. Rendelsham Forest, obviously, the UK. The Rendelsham Forest incident, which took place in the county of Suffolk in the United Kingdom, stands out as being one of the few cases where witnesses said they saw a craft land after weaving through the trees in a forest. One U.S. Air Force witness, the U.S. Air Force was stationed at a Royal Air Force base at the time, said, "I moved a little closer and I walked around the craft, and finally I walked right up to the craft and I noticed the fabric of the shell was more like a smooth, opaque black glass." While the UK's Ministry of Defence claimed that the lights seen were caused by the nearby Orfordness lighthouse, eyewitnesses from the time claim to this day that they saw something that was not of this earth, and that has since been covered up. The Belgian UFO airwave, 1989 to 90. The Belgian UFO wave is especially notable because it involves approximately 13,500 people who claim to have witnessed the incident, which took place over the course of several months. At the end of November 1989, citizens of Belgium reported seeing a large triangular UFO hovering in the sky. In March 1990, new sightings were confirmed by 2 military radar stations. 2 F-16 fighter jets were sent out to investigate. Though the pilots could not see anything, they were quickly able to lock on with an extremely fast-moving object that quickly disappeared using their radar. The photo above was widely spread a few months after the incident took place, though someone later came forward to say that he had faked the image. The Belgian Air Force has admitted to having no logical explanation for the activity. Phoenix Lights, that's a big one. March 13th, 1997, between 7:30 and 10:30 p.m., thousands of people reported seeing large, strange, bright lights over Nevada, Arizona, and part of Mexico. The first event to be seen was described as a V-shaped craft flying through the sky, which was roughly the size of a commercial airplane. I had heard one was much, much bigger. Okay. According to Qatar.com, one witness said, "We don't have anything that big." He said it was totally silent. "I've never seen anything even come close to the colors from the exhaust that propelled that thing. It was as big as downtown Prescott and completely blocked out the stars." Yeah, that's what I've heard described. It's much larger than just a commercial aircraft. The lights above the New Jersey Turnpike in 2001. On July 14th, 2001, several drivers on the New Jersey Turnpike stopped for around 15 minutes just after midnight to gaze at strange orange and yellow lights that were shaped in a V formation over the Arthur Kill waterway between Staten Island, New York, and Carteret, New Jersey. One of the witnesses was Carteret Police Department's Lieutenant Daniel Tarrant. While air traffic controllers denied any planes, military jets, or space flights could have caused the lights, a group known as the New York Strange Phenomena Investigators, New York SPI, claim that they have FAA radar data that corroborates the UFO sightings from that night. Number 8, the Nimitz Encounters. I think we're all familiar with those. The O'Hare International Airport sighting. That's an interesting one. I'm familiar with this one as well. And Flight 446 was getting ready to fly to North Carolina from Chicago's O'Hare International Airport on November 7th, 2006, when the United Airlines employee on the tarmac saw a dark metallic craft hovering over gate C-17. A total of 12 United employees, as well as a few witnesses outside the airport, later witnessed the disc-shaped craft. The witness said the saucer hovered for about 5 minutes before rapidly shooting up through the clouds, leaving a blue hole in the cloud cover. O'Hare controller and union official Greg Burzich humorously stated at the time that to fly 7 million light years over to O'Hare and then to have to turn around and go home because your gate was occupied is simply unacceptable. The others, the Chicago Tribune reported at the time, were upset that neither the government nor the airline investigated the incident and dismissed it as a weather phenomena. Apparently, after this craft just shot, it just exited. It was very overcast that day, but it exited so quickly in a perfectly vertical position. It left like a cookie cutter hole through the cloud cover, and the blue they saw coming through was from the blue sky above. And it was just regarded as a weather phenomena. And that hole was present for a long time. It did finally fill in again, but man, they just ignored the hell out of that one for sure. Number 10, East Coast flying saucer sighting of 2015. Leaked in 2017 at the same time as news of the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, the video below reveals an encounter between FA-18 Super Hornets and identified vehicle. Yeah, we've seen these too. Number 11, Project Grudge Report. 13 mutilated farm animals, latest 2019. In March 1956, ufologist reports say that Air Force Sergeant Jonathan Lovett and Major William Cunningham were searching for scattered debris from a recent rocket in the White Sands Missile Testing Grounds near Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico when, as history writes, Cunningham suddenly heard a loud scream from Lovett. Cunningham hurried across the dune that he was on, thinking he'd find Lovett had been bitten by a snake, and instead he claimed to have seen the officer with a long snake-like arm wrapped around his legs, being dragged into a silvery disc hovering above the ground. The craft then pulled Lovett inside, the officer claimed, and rose vertically into the sky. After Cunningham reported the incident, he was taken in for a psychiatric evaluation, and searches were launched for Sergeant Lovett. After 3 days, Lovett's nude deceased body was found. All his organs were missing. It was noted that they had been removed with extreme precision. Extreme precision. Yeah, that's not normal. This is, apparently, according to ufologists, the story accounts for report number 13 of the U.S. government's Project Grudge. Reports 1 to 12 and 14 are now declassified, but 13 remains a secret. What's more, mutilations of the same unexplainable nature have been reported in animals recently as the last year. As Alexander Wendt and Raymond Duval suggested in a study titled Sovereignty and a UFO, the authoritative UFO taboo exists due to the fact that knowing could upend our society. What do you believe? Are UFOs also known as UAPs? Explainable if we just take the time to research them? Are they even worth researching in the first place? Yeah, of course. Of course they're worth researching. I mean, I think we all would like to know what they are. I mean, whether or not they're going to be what we think they are is a whole nother issue, but to know what they are, I think, is powerful. That's important. I don't understand why somebody wouldn't want to know. That does not make sense. Now we're going to move over to an article from Mysterious Universe. Again, we touch base with Mysterious Universe quite a bit throughout the shows. It's just a really well done site, much like many sites that we use. But I have to say that if you're interested in the paranormal, if you're interested in the Fortean, if you're interested in cryptids and creatures and the like, you're going to want to check out mysteriousuniverse.org. They have thousands of articles over there written by incredible people doing some amazing searching and uncovering of phenomena that's really well documented and incredibly informative. Now, this is the article I was talking about as far as a paranormal repository of sorts. This article is entitled, "We Live in a Liminal," I'm not even sure what the word liminal means, "liminal realm, and now there's data to prove it." It's written by Bill Dorfield in June 25th of 2019. Earth is weird, and now there's evidence to back it up. That's like the whole article. The end. All over the world, thousands of people report weird lights in the sky, lost time, strange creatures in the woods, lake demons, and a whole gambit of other hair-prickly strangeness. However, a recurring problem that has been disparate nature of personal accounts. Until lately, there's never really been a global repository to catalog all these personal encounters. If only Google Earth had just haunted dark mode where we could see where all this weirdness is actually happening. Well, that's basically what Liminal Earth have created with their global paranormal map at liminal.earth. And there's the URL, liminal.earth, and we're going to pull it up in a second. Emerging from the fog of the Pacific Northwest, the Liminal Earth database is open for anyone to catalog their personal encounters with the unknown. As the data comes in, the paranormal researchers could visualize trends, validate group sightings, and link hotbeds of activity. Liminal Earth could be a step forward towards validating that we, in fact, live in a liminal plane. Liminal Earth, a global paranormal archive. Liminal Earth is described as itself as a crowdsourced map of uncanny experiences. It's a database for the creepy incidents that you might not immediately bring up over dinner with the in-laws. Founded as a side project by Jeremy Puma and Garrett Kelly, in 2017, Liminal Seattle first sought to acquire stories from the Pacific Northwest. Soon after opening the doors to the dark void, they quickly received local tales on everything from lost time, ghostly manifestations, cryptids, strange lights, murderous crows, and other special spectral goodies. It basically started out as a side project, but almost immediately we started getting tons of submissions and calls from local press, said Jeremy. After front page coverage on the Seattle Times, Liminal Seattle decided to take its normalizing the paranormal mission a bit more seriously. Rebranding to Liminal Earth, in 2019, they've become a legit paranormal cartographic group. The group source database has received over 230 entries at the time of writing and continues to grow by the day. Now have entries coming in from Chile, the UK, and more. As Jeremy from Liminal Earth tells us, the more entries, the better the data. How do we classify the strange? Over the past, some paranormal researchers have tried to create classification systems for high strangeness. Liminal Earth organizes things with handy map legend, dark forces, time distortions, mythologies, cryptids, thin places, straight up ghosts, high weirdness, classic UFO, strange animal, and visions. And there's more, but we're going to have to pick it up on the other side, folks, because we've hit another break. All right, so we're going to take this break. We'll be right back, and we're going to hit another article by our very own Brent Swanser coming up next, so don't miss it. Lots more to come. That article from Brent Swanser is about gargoyles. All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are on the last home stretch of the show. It's gone quick. Always goes quick, but that's how it happens. I wish I had an explanation for it, but I guess all the good times, all the good things do go quick, right? And I guess that means the portal's a good thing. Yes. Outstanding. So Circlic in the YouTube chat says, luminal has two meanings, both right and probably. Both right, probably. I don't know what those two meanings are yet, though, so hopefully he'll tell us, or she. Because I'd like to know what luminal means without having to Google it myself. I like it when you guys do that, Bart. It makes it easier. Tic Tacs. My mouth is bone dry. So, I'm just freshening up here. Getting ready for my last 25 minutes of reading. There we go. I would like to say that if you're watching or listening on TFR, iHeart, TuneIn, TalkStream Live, you can check out Paisley Wild coming up next. Don't even have to turn the channel. You can just stay tuned. And she'll be coming up next with her Spaces Between. Very possibly Don will be on there with her, as he is the producer of this show. And he does a good job over there as well. So that will be coming up next. If you want to watch her on her YouTube, you can certainly do that. And you can find her YouTube at youtube.com/thespacesbetween. If you're not familiar with that show, it's kind of basically her pagan journey. Her talking about esoteric modalities and healing and energy and different, I don't know if I want to say Wiccan as much as pagan philosophies and wisdoms. And it's really neat. You learn a lot by tuning in. So definitely give it a listen if you're interested in that stuff. And I think that's, really, in a large sense, a lot of the paganism is just returning to a lot of ancient roots for a lot of us. I think that a lot of our cultures, especially any of the European cultures, were highly influenced by that and permeated a lot of this stuff through the ancient world. And so it's kind of like looking back at how things were done and to see if you can find value into that in today's world in some sense. But anyway, that's that show, and that's coming up next. So if you're tuning in to this show and you just want to hang out for what's next, that's how you do it. So we're talking about the luminal world and this database. And they said categorizing the non-elemental can get hairy, but it seems liminal Earth segments things well enough while allowing room for blurry accounts and humorous weird tales. As Liminal Seattle tells us, the legend kind of happened organically. We wanted to cover the whole spectrum of extraordinary experience, so we came up with this list, which we think covers everything we're interested in capturing. And so it says recent entries of spooky encounters on liminal Earth first-hand accounts range in depth, time, and space. Some brief encounters were just had, while others recount deep sagas from the 80s or 90s. Most include exact GPS coordinates, an occult investigator's absolute dream. Some even include hand-drawn depictions or photo evidence. Here are some examples below. The Demon of Playa Ancha. With panic and strangeness, he noticed that in one of the treetops, something moved. He looked closely at the figure that would be the size of an orangutan. It moved, he looked at it and realized it had bright, permeating red eyes. Looked at him in a way, according to him, evil, which was submitted from Chile. Yeah, they don't have a lot of orangutans up there in Chile. So that's unusual. But that's talking about the Demon of Playa Ancha. UFO light show, I noticed 3 white lights in the sky. They were a triangular pattern. We watched, as we watched, one of the lights turned red and then moved to form a straight line. And we watched the light at the end of the line would move up to, again, form a triangle. Over and over again, they did this, and I pulled over to the side of the road at one point to watch. When I got back on the road, a state cop pulled up alongside of me. Thinking he was going to pull me over, I looked up and saw he was watching them too. The lights suddenly disappeared, just like faded out. The humming ghost of Jeffersonville, Georgia. On several occasions, we have seen and heard the ghost of a small African-American girl in a patchwork dress. She hums and sings, and we first encountered her when I was young. I came back from playing and told my mom that there was a girl in the woods. I'm not quite sure the history of my dad's 36-acre property or what families owned it prior. Wrong door. I looked to see a far wall of the living room had disappeared, and a misty sort of landscape was seen in the distance. 3 odd-looking creatures stood in the living room, and one hissed at me. I just continued walking to the bathroom, shaking like a leaf. I stayed there for about half an hour until I could bring myself to open the door. Walking out, I could see it was all back to normal. Weird. Yeah, that's very weird. Duwamish River Monster. I witnessed a large, menacing 8 to 10 foot kelp monster strutting about on the banks of the Duwamish River at the beach at 8th Avenue South Park, and I think it was the Lufu. It came out of the water, sludging towards me at a slow pace. It had deep red glowing eyes, full on revenge, but was covered in a horrible swath of litter, mud, and fishing nets. Submitted by Paul, different man, under cryptoids. Okay. How much longer is this? Okay, so we're almost there. It says, as more entities come in, we'll likely see interesting trends emerge in the liminal Earth data. With a verbose tagging system and GPS coordinates, we'll have to ample metadata to cover hotspots of activity with more submissions. Imagine if the thousands of Phoenix Lights viewers had a central repository to share their accounts when the phenomenon was occurring. Such a database would have given more credence to the lights and acted as a historical record. A fantastic blend of technology and weirdness, liminal Earth could be a leap forward for paranormal research, helping give credence to both personal accounts and large phenomena alike. Yeah, like with anything else, it's the more data that's collected gives you maybe possible synchronicities between events that might begin to show patterns, but it's all with reporting. That won't come just of itself. But here's a glimpse at the liminal Earth database, and I'm just going to look in my area here. So here's the north of, the hell's that? Well, getting towards the north of Idaho. I'm actually up here in this town called Sandpoint. Oops, gotta hit scroll. But it looks like there's still a lot that needs to be reported. But I could put my UFO experience in here and stuff too, but I just wanted to click on one to see. Oh God, look at that font. Oof. Uh-oh. I don't know what just happened. Not sure. Oh, that's what happened. Okay. Derp. Anyway, so you can pull up different areas of the globe, as it were, and check them out. Here's Australia. So there's, oh Jesus, don't do that. Oh God, I obviously need to learn how to work this, but it's still very cool. So you just click on what you want. It gives you a pop-up, and then it'll refresh the window with that highlighted. But you can see all of the, where's the key? Is there a key or something? Oh, here we go. Here's all of the different types of experiences. And so, time mythologies, cryptoids. I bet you if we went to the Pacific Northwest, we'll find cryptoids. Cryptoids. I don't know if I like that term or not, but it's the one they're using. Yeah, of course, here's the Olympic Peninsula over in Washington, and sure enough, yeah, they've got some identified there. I don't know the dates. Let's see. This is, don't know a date. I don't know. Okay, so you can read about all these accounts just by clicking on this map. So if you want to check it out, go to liminal, liminal.earth. And you can pull up that map, liminal.earth, and check it out. Check out the different reports that are being categorized up there and such, and maybe you'll find something in your area. that might corroborate something you've seen, and you could add yours to it as well to make that a little more comprehensive. So very cool. But as I promised, we're going to close out the show tonight with an article by our very own Brent Swanser. And I'm going to have to kind of move through this at a little bit of a pace. We got about 15 minutes, so I think I can do it, but we'll see. Depends on if my palates are cooperating. But this is an article by Brent Swanser from mysteriousuniverse.org, dated June 19th, 2019, Bizarre Modern Encounters with Real Gargoyles. All across the world sit stone demons perched atop dizzying heights to stare out across the countryside below in silent frozen stares of contemplation, and which are collectively known as gargoyles. The term gargoyle is thought to come from the name of a monster in the 7th century called La Gargoyle, maybe, and is said to terrorize the country of France in the region of the Seine River. I don't know how to pronounce that for sure. Before going righteously slain by Saint Romanus, the Archbishop of Rouen. Upon the mighty beast's death, the lore has it that its head was supposedly mounted on the church to keep other monsters at bay, and that from here grew the tradition of crafting the likeliness of grotesque demons out of stone in order to serve as protectors or guardians of important places. It turned into quite an architectural phenomenon, and gargoyles sprouted up all over on churches, cathedrals, anything else that needed protection from demons and evil spirits. Gargoyles can be seen all over the world, including famously the Notre Dame in Paris and 112 gargoyles of the Washington National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. But are these creatures merely confined to these stones? Apparitions eternally looking upon their domain. In more modern times, there have been sightings of what are often compared by witnesses to be distinctly like stone gargoyles of centuries past, only living. And they seem to come out from out past the fringe of the bizarre. Mostly described as winged, hunched-over gruesome abominations that are hard to really categorize. One report from 2004 comes from the site Phantoms and Monsters, concerns a witness in Bluefield, West Virginia, who had an encounter with just such a monstrosity when he was a child. He describes the area as being mostly quaint. Let me do this. Mostly quaint, rural farmland, and he says one day he had a very frightening experience when he was playing near a hedge separating his house and the neighbors. He says of what happened next. I was sitting there in broad sunny daylight when all of a sudden I saw a rustling in the hedges. I looked over and popped out what can only put into words as a gargoyle. It looked at me with solid pointed black eyes. It had frog green skin. Its face looked like a frog, except it had teeth and ears that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. Its ears flexed outward like two big green gloves on the side of its head, like the king that the gargoyles and statues has. Its body was shaped like a bulldog, and its webbed feet turned inward as it walked. Once it saw me, it paused, opened its mouth wide, and hissed. He held it wide open, as if to taste the air. I was so scared that I was completely paralyzed. I tried to cry for help, but nothing came out. And as if someone took the pause button off of me, I fled so fast to my home that I don't even remember the race getting there. I was in a panic. I tried to describe it for my mom, and she pointed at the animal childcraft book and said, "See if you can show Mommy a picture of the animal." The closest animal that I could find that it looked like what I saw was a koala bear, but I only picked that animal out because it had a similar black pointed eyes. My mother laughed and said, "Son, those animals are only in Australia. What you probably saw was a dog, and with that, it was never spoken of again." That sounds familiar. I think we might have covered this before. Could this part possibly have just been a misidentified dog? With a description like that, if not, then what was it? Your guess is as good as anyone's. A similar disturbing account reported at around the same time comes from Reddit from a witness who says his own experience happened in California's Central Valley. This time in a rather suburban area surrounded by orchards. He described how one evening at around 10 p.m. he was riding a skateboard home when he heard what sounded like gusts of wind. Even though the night was calm, he says of what happened next. I look up in the direction of the sound, and behind the slope of my neighbor's roof, I see two large wings flap and then begin to fold, as if the creature had just landed there. As the wings were folding, I guess they were about 5 feet in length, and I noticed that the house light from behind the creature trickled through the wings, like they were opaque and leathery, not feathered like a hawk's. It seemed to have heard me as I was passing, and it became still, wings folded and rising over its circular head. It had no ears or horns or anything protruding from its head. It was just round. I couldn't see much more as the light from behind the creature was behind the creature, so it was black silhouette, but the leather on its wings were brown. I pulled out my phone and tried to use the flashlight setting to get a better view of it as I was passing, but the light didn't reach far enough, and the creature slowly started to descend behind the slope of the roof, until I no longer saw it. I ran into my home and just laid on the bed thinking about what the hell I'd just seen. It was too big to be a bat. I've seen bats around here, and they're all small, and their head is shaped nothing like that. Nothing like what I'd seen. It couldn't have been a bird either, as distinctly I remember the wings being leathery with no feathers. Again, we're left to wonder just what it is this witness could be possibly seen. Demon? Alien? Mystery creature? Who knows? Another intriguing account comes from Renee Rude at The Paranormalist, who says that her own experience happened one summer when she was a girl of 9 years of age. One evening she was driving with her mom along a rural road somewhere in the United States, through an area that she describes as dotted with ponds and woodlands, and that is when she would see something that seems very much like a gargoyle. She says of her otherworldly experience, "It was crouched high in a half-dead oak tree that stood on the bank of a pond. The moon was full or close to it, and the wind was still. I had enough time to see the creature, look for its reflection in the polished mirror of water beneath it, and then look back up to confirm what I was seeing. I suppose I was wondering if there was a weirdly contorted part of the tree itself, then the damn thing moved. At first I thought I was going to dive into the pond, but then I realized it was just turning away from the road, and as we swept past it, I twisted around in my seat to keep it in sight, and I swear, its eyes flared red in our taillights. Then I saw it had wings folded down its back. I estimated it to be the size of a large dog or a small goat. I thought, though the shape was wrong, it was holding itself in a hunched, compact, almost huddled position. It had arms and legs shaped like those of a monkey or a lemur, but much thicker and bulkier. Or a primate of some sort seemed most likely, but I was puzzled because the body didn't look furry, but rather rough and scaly like an alligator. When I caught a glimpse of the wings, I thought they looked like a bat's. Of course, I tried to tell Mom and Chet I'd seen something, but when I described it, they chuckled and refused to go back and look for it. What? You saw what? Don't believe him. Don't believe him. A primate of some sort? Curiouser and curiouser. In 2005, there was a report on Reddit from a witness who claimed to have seen one of the creatures on a rural ranch in Nevada. He claims that he was out on the property one dark night with his only flashlight to provide illumination, when something came to him from out of his nightmares. He explains, "I felt a sudden compulsion to turn my head to my front right. In the beam from the flashlight in front of my grandmother's chicken coop, about 15 feet from me, was an entity, about 7 feet tall. It had its back to me. It halfway turned and looked over its left shoulder at me, and turned enough that I could see it was definitely male. He had a rather long bulbous nose, large wings down to his mid-calves, skin and wings that looked leathery, and it was a taupe or pinkish color. No hair that I could see. He also was very thin, almost skeletal in appearance, with some sort of bony protrusions extending from the shoulders. I'll never forget it. Scared the crap out of me. I didn't notice any dead animals in the area afterward, if there were any." Well, there's actually been a surprising number of such strange encounters going all the way up into very recent times. In 2011, there was a report on True Ghost Tales from a woman calling herself Ashley J., who says that she had been out one night taking a walk with her boyfriend in her hometown in Northern California when they had a brush with the world of the weird. It was about 3 a.m. and the street was described as well lit. The night was calm, and they strolled along and heard a whooshing sound like flapping wings and looked up to see a rather monstrous form coming towards them, of which she says he was flying low. So I got a real good look at him. His wingspan was the size of a small car, and he looked to be 7.5 feet tall at least. The legs and head looked like that of a beast's, but the torso was a big man's with broad shoulders. I saw his wings flap again, but he mostly glided rather gracefully, and that's the only part about him I would describe as graceful. I screamed out, "Oh my God, look!" within the first 2 seconds, and my boyfriend got a real good look at him too. I think the demon, creature, whatever, heard me, because when that happened, he swooped down below the telephone pole and he disappeared when he passed the wiring. Keep in mind, this is a well-lit area with no trees. We should have seen him pass the other side clearly, but as his body passes the electric wire, he vanished like he was going through a door or something. Oh man, how are we doing? We're okay. From the site Phantoms and Monsters, there have been quite a few of the other reports of gargoyles gathered by Lon Strickler. One of them supposedly occurring in the spring of 2010 at a place near County Road and Black Road in West Joliet, Illinois. The witness says that he was in the home enjoying a TV show with the window open in one evening when he heard the muffled sobbing of what he took to be perhaps a woman crying out in the darkness. He went out to investigate the sound, and that was when he saw a 4.5-foot dark-colored entity sitting atop the neighbor's roof, which was crouched and hunched over and distinctly reminded the witness of a gargoyle. Strickler says of what happened next. The winged being stood and leaped from the roof and then dove towards the ground. As it descended, the huge 10 to 12-foot wings unfurled, and it swooped upwards and quickly ascended into the night sky. The witness never saw the wings flap as the being ascended. He did notice that it had pointed ears, but could not make out any further features in the face. The wings were attached from the shoulders to the legs and didn't seem to have detached arms. This particular report was followed up by paranormal researcher Tobias Wayland from the Singular Fortean Society, and it definitely seems to be keeping with the feel of these gargoyle reports. Although it could be connected with the ongoing sightings of flying entities in the Lake Michigan region, of which I've covered here before, and which you can read a full timeline compiled by the Singular Fortean Society here. And there's links respectively. From the state of Florida, there is no spate of very recent supposed gargoyle encounters, also reported to Phantom and Monsters in 2018. A creature described as a humanoid about 5 or 6 feet tall, with bat-like wings, was seen near Zephyr Hills, Florida, on 2 separate occasions by 2 different truck drivers. On both these occasions, the drivers said that they had noticed dead deer strewn along the road, although it was unclear if the two were related. Both truck drivers described being overcome with a paralyzing fear at the time, and specifically mentioned the entities as looking like gargoyles. Interestingly, there was another witness in Zephyr Hills who had an encounter that sounds very similar at their own residence, where they saw a bat-winged creature lurking about the property. Also in 2018 was a report from the same site from a witness in Abingdon, Massachusetts, who was apparently out one evening having a cigarettes, at the time when he heard a whooshing sound of what sounded like massive wings. When he looked up, he says he saw the distinctly described as a gargoyle in every sense. The witness explained to Lon Strickler, "I look up and see this winged creature land on my neighbor's roof and just sit there like a gargoyle would. And I thought I was seeing something wrong, but then the creature jumped up, flew away, and I could see its entire body. It was the size of a small human, but with massive wings. It reminded me of a gargoyle. I couldn't see the creature's face because it was dark, and it was on the roof facing away from me. It looked black with a wingspan of maybe 4 to 5 feet. The creature itself, while crouched on the roof, looked the size of a smaller human, maybe 4 feet. I watched it trying to figure out what I was looking at for maybe a minute, and then it jumped and flew off. Even then, it flew away. It still looked like on the shorter end. As it flew, its legs hung hung, but still in an almost crouching position. It wasn't a massive creature, but it was definitely humanoid in appearance. Because it was on a roof next door, crouched, it's possible this thing could have been much larger. I wish I could have seen its face. Yeah, there you go. What are they? Are they out there? Or are these something else? I don't know. It's very curious, but that's going to be all the portal we have time for. Because the clock just kept ticking the whole time. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining me here on the portal. And I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. And I'll be back tomorrow night with the Night Terrors, so I hope you'll join me. But love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice, take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. Love you. Good night.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for